Hey listeners, last year was our 15th year of the best in food storytelling. As we head into 2025, we're kicking off a contest in collaboration with the podcast series Feast and Harmony and Sixth Man, where you have the opportunity to win a 4-night cruise for 2 on Chefs Making Waves, a food, wine, and spirits festival at sea. When you donate to HRN, you'll be entered for the chance to win a porthole cabin for 2 on Chefs Making Waves, sailing May 5th through 9th, 2025, from Miami to Cozumel, Mexico on Norwegian Gem. You'll also support another year of great food storytelling with a portion of your donation going toward disaster relief for the food and beverage communities within Western North Carolina and Southern California. This cruise is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for culinary adventurers, featuring top celebrity chefs including Jonathan Waxman, Antonio Lafaso, Robert Irvine, and many, many more. There's a myriad of experiences such as restaurant takeovers, live food and mixology demos, themed parties, and more. To enter your chance to win, please visit heritageradionetwork.org/cruise. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 or over to enter. That's heritageradionetwork.org/cruise.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hello, welcome to Japan Eats. I'm your host Aki Kotoyama, a food writer and a director of the New York Japanese Culinary Academy, which promotes a deep understanding of Japanese cuisine in America. We are broadcasting live from Brooklyn, New York. This show is all about Japanese food and food culture. We see sushi at every Ramen supermarket, but what is beyond sushi? We hear dashi ramen izakaya, but what exactly are they? Japanese food is so mystery for many people, and I try to demystify it in this program with my good guests. My guest today is Alexander Nicolau, who is the founder of Mandaracha in Kyoto, which opened in 2019. Originally from France, Alex fell in love with Japanese tea while he was working in the fields of food technology and open innovation. And Mandaracha is a very special place where you can find a variety of Japanese tea, which Alex selected by visiting and meeting with each producer. And you can also enjoy a tea ceremony and have other cultural experiences, such as Shamisen guitar performance and a Rakugo comedy show. And so today, we'll discuss how Alex got into Japanese tea, why he loves Japanese tea so much as he switched to his career, the classic and the new types of Japanese tea Alex recommends, the rapidly changing status and the future of Japanese tea industry, and much, much more. But before we start, Japan Eats is available on Heritage Radio Network website, as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify as a podcast. So please go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, whichever you listen to, and subscribe to Japan Eats. And please write to have a review. We truly appreciate your feedback. Now let's start a conversation with Alexander Nicolau. Hi Alexa, welcome to the show.
Hello Akiko, very nice to be with you tonight.
Yeah, so speaking from Kyoto, that's very exciting.
Yes.
So to get to know you first, where are you from and what did you eat when you grew up?
So I grew up in France and I ate for until my 20s mostly French food. And because my family had some Eastern European origin, I had some Eastern European food as well. And that was close a bit to Greek and Mediterranean food. That was until my 25 years old.
Sounds like you had the best of the world cuisines from in Europe. So that's amazing. So you have an impressive global background. Sounds like everything started after you 25 or even earlier. So I heard that before you started your tea business, you worked in 30 countries and lived in 6 countries, including Malta, Germany, the UK, Singapore, and Japan. So what was the area of work in your whole career? Obviously, it's not tea.
No, it was not tea. So my first career was very different. I had a job which was fascinating. I graduated in chemistry, so I'm a chemist by training. But I was lucky enough to have one of my first job in Malta. And in Malta, I work in a United Nations Center for the Environment, and I became an expert in marine pollution. So following that, I moved to London, and for many years, I was attending oil pollution accidents and spills all over the world. And this is where I had to travel a lot, and this is why we count so many countries. Yes, so that was the first part of my career, and I was in oil for more than 10 years or something. Yes.
Wow. It almost sounds like the opposite. Although as a chemistry knowledge, I'm sure it works in tea business as well.
Yes. You said that, many things happen after 25. Actually, no, many things happen after 40, I will say. Before that is just exploration, knowing oneself, trying to know the words. We always look outside, and finally we start to look inside and we discover the most beautiful treasures.
That's exactly what I said. I feel exactly the same way. So, and so how did you get into Japanese tea, and what is the reason why you love Japanese tea so much that even you switched your career?
So that's a very good question. And when I remember this, it sounds a bit crazy. But as far as I remember, even as a child or as a teenager or as a young man, I was very attracted by Japan. In the late 90s, early 2000, I even applied for my first jobs in chemistry in Japanese chemical companies. I knew that it would be very difficult to get there, but still I did. And I got very polite replies from HR from Japan. Back then, written by post, the email was just starting, but I had beautiful letters coming back. Thank you for your interest. We don't have currently positions. And I always thought one day I will go there. And you see, without the chemistry, without my job in oil pollution and in accident, I wouldn't have come and work in Japan, or probably not in the same way. So one day, the company sent me for a job in Japan. And that was my first time. It was in 2004. And following that, it worked very well. I got on very well with the people here, where they told me, that's so cool, Alex. It would be good if you come again. And then they sent me a second time. Then they sent me a third time, different cases. And every time I was coming back, I was getting more and more attracted, and at the same time frustrated because I wouldn't speak the language. So happened what happened. Basically, 1 year later, I resigned and I moved to Japan to learn Japanese language. So I decided to make a break in my career, to the despair of all my families and people who thought I was getting crazy, to stop my career. But actually, it was an incredible time, incredible moment to have this break in my career.
Right. Well, it sounds like it was a calling, but was it because of a culture, or did something with tea specifically?
No, the tea was not present at the beginning, but I discovered the tea at the same time. So at the beginning, the language, the culture, the books, the cinema. I'm a big cinema fan, so of course Kurosawa was very famous in France, and I like very much old movies, also in black and white. Of course, the Seven Samurai, but more. And martial arts in France is very popular. So we have even today, big sportsmen in judo, are French. You have Aikido, karate, you name it. And actually, these were famous even before Japanese food became famous in France, because I was not in France when Japanese food became famous. So it was not the tea, it was all the rest. Something made me feel like familiar, comfortable, balanced. And I knew that I needed to spend more time here. I had something to accomplish. And the funny thing is, of course, I got, when it comes to tea, the first tea that fascinated me, that opened the window, actually was not in Japan. It happened in China. I was also working in China, and I was visiting for many weeks. And then I came across this tea culture with someone who I wouldn't speak the language, because I wouldn't speak Chinese and they wouldn't speak English. But something magic happened. Is I could spend many hours in the shop drinking tea, looking at all the decoration. It looked like very, very artistic. It was beautiful for the senses, and it really caught my attention. And following this, I got exposed to tea in Japan. And I was a bit ignorant back then because I didn't know really how it started. We just know that tea is from the East, China, Japan, it's very blurry for us. But Japan also is very ancient. And I realized the tea here is different. And here is this famous matcha. And then being an engineer and a researcher, I was thinking, why are they different? And that's, I opened a window to what was going to be my passion. And that it still is today.
Right. Well, interesting. I mean, tea, I love coffee, but tea has something very distinctly different. Even when you spend the same amount of time over a cup of coffee or tea, and it's something, the time flows differently, the kind of thing. But that's another episode probably. So
Yes.
now you dug into something very important. So let's talk about Japanese tea before we get into your unique tea business in
Yes.
Kyoto. So
Mm.
tea originally, like you said, came to Japan from China around 1,000 years ago.
Mm.
And since then, Japanese people have developed their own tea culture, like everything else. So what is the difference between Japanese tea culture and other cultures like Chinese, and not to mention English? Do you think the Japanese tea have a different approach or mindset about they consume? It's a tea, same leaves of tea. So yeah, for example, tea can be part of formal tea ceremony or casual beverage to have all
Yes.
day, every day. I saw it by your mom or something like that. So yeah, what is the
Yes.
difference?
So there have been many evolutions in the tea and the way to drink tea. So I'm going to give a bit of perspective here. So even from China, so Japan followed or got a continuation from China during 3 periods. There have been 3 periods of tea. There is the first period of tea, which is before the year 1000, and it started in China during the Tang Dynasty. And during the Tang Dynasty, this is the time we got the first book of tea by a sage called Yu Lu. The tea arrived in Japan the first time around the year 800 and something by the famous monk Kukai. Kukai is the monk who brought Buddhism back to Japan, the Shingon Buddhism, and is very famous in Japan. That's the first period of tea, where the tea is called, the first period was the tea was fermented, which means that it was in sort of cakes, or bricks. We are not sure exactly what it was, but it's probably close to what is called pu'er tea in China today. It arrived the first time, but it didn't really grow at that moment. We know that at the court it was celebrated, and that the emperor ordered back then to have tea and tea gardens. Then we got a bit of a blank in history. We are not sure how much tea developed, but we know that 400 years later, during the Song dynasty, at that moment in China, the tea was drunk in powder. And this is when the monk Esai is the founder of the Zen in Japan. So the first Zen temple that is very close to our shop, that is called the Kenninji, was founded by the monk Esai. We know that for sure that Esai brought back the tea seed from Song China and planted them in Kyushu and in Kyoto. And we know that it is the real beginning of Japanese tea culture, and the tea was in the form of a powder. This powder form expanded and became the main way to have tea in Japan for many hundred years. While in China, it disappeared. So the Song dynasty disappeared, and with it, its powder tea. Then came the Mongol Empire of Genghis Khan, and then the Ming Dynasty. And the Ming Dynasty is the steeped leaf tea. So powder tea got even forbidden in China, but it survived in Japan. So this powder tea is the ancestor of the current matcha. And matcha survived since this time and was the main way to drink tea. And I believe it stayed very iconic in Japan, and it got immortal because of this famous tea ceremony that was created first by Murata Juko and then perfected by Sen Norikyu under the orders of Hideyoshi Toyotomi. Then we created the tea ceremony, or the way of tea, because the ceremony is not a proper word in English, but this is what they came up with. It was part of this way of serving tea. So when we talk about culture, Here we are talking about a meditative way of drinking tea that is as aspect to wisdom, to health, to meditation, and something that is very precious that was prepared for a peaceful time, respectful time, and usually the higher class of the society. So it has a very, very deep connotation of connected with Buddhism, connected with health, connected with respect, and with spirituality. And it was the same in China. The casual way to drink tea came a bit later to open to the society.
I never got into this in quick
Mm,
and summary, but it's so deep. So
mm.
I will have to look up again everything. There's so much to learn about. And the mindset of tea, like powder to steep and all those things, I'm sure people will spend a lot of time. What's the best way to drink? But interestingly, the idea of Zen, very kind of introspective mindset, is it's kind of tea is a tool or some kind of vehicle to help you focus on who you are and the very spiritual aspects of yourself. So, and you said it's the same as in China. Is China also really still showing about, kind of meditative aspect of drinking tea?
I'm sure that there are still many people who find themselves because it's the original intent as it was in ancient China. So, of course, the beverage became more and more popular. With the third period of tea, we increased many possibilities because the steep leaves became, in Japan, it materialized under the name of sencha. Sencha is a steep leaf tea and is the main way to drink tea nowadays. But in China also, most of the teas are steep leaves. The powder disappear. I'm sure they're doing a little bit for export now. But the steep leaf and the fermented tea remain as it is in China. So now in China, they kept something that is very precious and beautiful. It's called the Guangfu Cha. They have tea tables, and the tea master will prepare the tea for everybody. And there will be a long process of preparing tea, adjusting the temperature, and getting many cups of small cups of tea while spending time peacefully to talk with everybody. So it will be centered around the one who is preparing the tea at the table. In Japan, the tea master was having most of the time what we call a tea ceremony, but the steep leaf tea became more casual and actually was more spread out by another big character, famous character, another monk. You see, monks made many things in Japan. But he was a beggar monk called Bai Sao. And he wanted to spread the tea to all the layers of society because he knew the goodness of tea, and he was distributing sencha. So the monk and beggar Bai Sao became very popular. And this is why in the 18th century, tea became the big beverage in Japan, the green tea under the form of sencha in that time. So here it becomes more casual, but still the tea time is something that is not rushed, is not quick. It's something that we take the time to appreciate and take the time to be quiet. So
Interesting.
you see, there is a bit of a difference in our current society that tends to be a bit more productive and rushed.
Right. And you just mentioned, democratized tea consumption. And as the tea became really fancy and popular around, I think, the 15th century, shoguns and samurais started to use tea parties with the expensive tea vessels and tea. And then they used the occasion, the very exclusive parties to show off their power and wealth to be able to buy those, I think, very expensive teacups and vessels. And then that kind of meetings became the political gatherings also. So it really had a different period when it comes to tea. And it's amazing how one plant processed as a beverage became so much in 1,000 years in Japan too. And so you mentioned a couple different types of tea. So Japanese tea is processed differently from Chinese tea or English tea. So what is the main difference in the process and the resulting tastes and flavors of Japanese tea?
So We can talk about it for hours, but I'll be short. Japan has a culture that is coming mostly from green tea family. So there are 6 colors of tea. You have white, green, yellow, blue, red, and black. With a little trick that the red is what we call black in English, and the black is what we call dark or fermented in English. But Japanese tea originally is under the green category. And the green category, so what is important for the listeners to understand is that the tea, what we call tea, is coming from the same plant, which is called Camellia sinensis. What we usually call tea or herbal teas, or for example, rooibos tea, tea became a synonym for infusion or tisane, like we call them in French, which are made from other types of plants. But tea is Camellia sinensis, cha in Chinese and in Japanese. Now, what is important is they're all coming from the same species, but with time and space, there are many varieties. First, 2 main varieties, the variety sinensis and the variety assamica, that we find in China. In China, we find mostly sinensis, and in Japan, sinensis. And sinensis is very good to make green tea. The variety assamica has bigger leaves and is better, so more suitable to make what we call black tea in English, red tea in Japanese. So this is one of the differences. We've got varieties, and the original tea plant was very big tree. The one we found in South China, in Yunnan, are big trees. They are mostly in this assamica variety. But in Japan and in other parts of China, it is smaller. It has been cultivated, and by breeding, the tea evolved. So now the tea bushes, the tea trees we've got in China, in Taiwan, in India, in Japan, are different. The farmers, as well as the researcher, they created new varieties, cultivated varieties, we call that. It's not unique to tea. You find it for grain, you find it for cereals, you find it for fruits. You got cultivated varieties to improve resistance to a certain climate. So Japan is a bit cold. So we've got a variety that is performing very well in Japan that is called the Yabukita. But there are many others. So we have more than 100 cultivated varieties that are registered in Japan. And they are different from the ones in China, and they're different from the one in India or Taiwan, because now they're protected.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm just digging into the whole, just the impossibly deep world of tea. I think I realized.
So the last layer I need to say, because you told me how it differs from different teas. So Japanese tea is mostly green, not only, but mostly. And within the green tea, the main difference with other green teas, with a green tea, the other very famous green teas from China, is coming from the process. So both of them are green, but to keep the tea green, we need to process it with heat, because when we pick up the tea during the harvest, if we don't do anything, it will oxidize and it will become what we call black tea. So we need to apply heat. In China, traditionally, they apply heat in big pans, and it's a pan firing method. In Japan, they prefer the steaming method. This is the main difference. So most of the Japanese teas are obtained by steam, and that affects the nose, the flavor, the taste. And this is how we get more of a more grassy taste, because the steam is more gentle, so we are closer to the plant. But it's also preserved mostly the natural ingredient from the plant, and develop also what we call this famous umami taste.
So yeah, I actually love Chinese tea too. That's a very, very different types of Chinese tea too. But that one thing distinctively, when I really pour the glass, kind of like the protected glass, the heat protected glass, is electric green. It's impossible. It's just a natural color coming out of the tea leaves. So yeah, the scent and the umami, like you mentioned, it's a very unique property that you can find only in Japanese tea. So yeah, I hope our listeners really can try different types of tea. And so what are the main types of traditional Japanese tea?
When we call traditional, So I'm going to give some names that are traditional because some of other ones are more new. So the most traditional, of course, is the matcha. The matcha is very unique. So let me just say a few words about matcha because recently there is a matcha boom. Everybody wants matcha, and very few people actually know what real matcha is. So a matcha is a tea that is a green tea that is under a powder form, but it has a few characteristics that are very different from any just green tea. So the first characteristic is that the tea must be harvested to have a good matcha, high-grade matcha. We need to have a tea that is harvested in spring. If it's a nibansha or a second harvest of summer, the taste will be very, very different. The second one is matcha needs to be shaded. So the shading technique has been developed in Japan during the 19th century and is applied for other teas like gyokuro, but also matcha. If you don't shade the tree, the tea will be too bitter. That will be very difficult to drink. So shading for at least 20 days before harvest. It will change the chemistry of the tea. Then the grinding process is very important in order to have a very, very thin powder. And there is a technique called the tensha method that exists only in Japan. So as you see, it's not often explained, but matcha has been evolving and became a wonderful tea. So what is called overseas ceremonial matcha, I must insist that ceremonial grade doesn't exist in Japan. So very often it's a marketing term to define good teas, but it has been used and abused because there is no certification to say this matcha is ceremonial or is not. We know that it is high grade, usually by the price and by the techniques that have been employed, and also by the type of cultivar. So matcha is the most traditional tea since the 12th century. Then comes sencha, which is a non-shaded green tea, but steamed. Then we have also the gyokuro, that is a beautiful tea that has been shaded and that a very beautiful umami. Then we've got traditional but rare. We have a green tea that is processed like in China, because long time ago, before the steaming method, the pan firing method was used like in China. And now only 1% of the tea in Japan is processed this way, and mostly in Kyushu, so in the southern island of Japan, in the prefecture of Kumamoto and Miyazaki. We have also some traditional teas that are not well known, but they resemble the teas from the first period that I was mentioning before that are fermented. They don't taste like pu'er from China, but they are more sour because they have a different fermentation. So they can have the bacterial fermentation with a fungi, but they also have the bacillolactic fermentation like yogurt. So they develop a sour taste. And we know that these teas that are specific to Shikoku Island have been around for 100 years, but we don't know exactly when they arrived. It could have been as long as Kukai. It could have been as a few hundred years. It's very difficult to find traces, but they exist only in Shikoku. It's quite amazing. And then we've got the teas that are made with the older leaves that fall into the categories of bancha. And bancha usually doesn't have a good reputation, or we look at them like an inferior class of tea, but there are some wonderful bancha because it comes with a totally different flavor profile. Some are fired, some are roasted, some are fresh, some are harvested in winter. So we have a full family of different banchas that I really recommend to try because you will be surprised.
So bancha, you said old, but it's not old vines or anything. It's a plant. It's the order of picking, right?
Yes,
you
exactly.
grow
Yes.
longer. You mean like longer periods of growing.
Yes, they're not the freshly grown sprout. They're the leaf that are just below.
Right. So the tip would be more expensive because it's such a baby one. You need more quantity to produce the same amount of tea and just the different delicate flavors. And it's it's like you just name it, but it's your personal preference. Some people really like bancha flavor because the big leaves have more different flavors. So yeah, it's just amazing that I really learned from you. Tea is very regional, so it's fun to visit each prefecture. Maybe you can find a diverse, different kinds of tea in Japan, right?
Yes, the countryside of Japan is beautiful. So I'm very blessed because I go myself to meet the farmers, to check the environment, to learn from them, to listen to their stories. Because the tea making, I read many books, but books tell you just the basic of the theory. Every farmer will have something specific in their technique, in their process, something that they know and that what either that they discovered themselves or that was transmitted from a previous generation. Because most of the tea farms are not new businesses; they are inherited for many generations.
Right. So you explained all the classic style of tea, and then usually people just go for sencha or gyokuro and the matcha for some special occasions. And then I started to hear new types of Japanese tea in the market. Um, you know, in addition to those traditional tea, and wakocha is something that caught my attention, and I tasted a couple times some very impressively good wakocha. So what is Wakocha and how is it different from classic English style or Chinese style black tea?
Okay, so that's a very good question because wakocha is something that is really getting popular and needs to get more attention. So wakocha means simply Japanese red tea. In English will be Japanese black tea. And the difference between the Japanese black tea and I will say a Chinese black tea or Indian or Sri Lanka black tea that is drunk in England is the varieties are different. Most of the black teas are usually made from the Asamika variety, and they are very strong and powerful. The Japanese black tea is usually made either from the Sinensis variety, so we have some Japanese developed varieties, and it's pretty light. You see, they don't have the same dark robe. They are lighter in taste, but they have a very gentle aroma. And sometimes some new varieties have been developed, but they are hybrids. They are hybrid between Asamika and Sinensis. So I've been exploring a little bit with some of them, some that are the classic Japanese varieties, some that are hybrid, and they come with different aroma. They come with different characteristics. We've got far more variations between the cultivars in black tea than with what I could observe with green teas. But what is very interesting is they are generally more gentle. We can steep them also for a bit longer. They are getting increasingly good. I've got 4 types in my shop, but what is very interesting with Japanese black tea is it seems that we can grow it virtually anywhere. We don't need to be in a specific place to have a best black tea. But there is a trend to have black tea in the hottest region now. For example, I know a farmer in Okinawa. Okinawa is very small and usually not that suitable for tea because it's very hot. I think they changed to black tea. And they're making a wonderful black tea, and most of it is in black tea. And south of Kyushu or Yakushima, where I went to get some tea as well that is also organic and beautiful, the black tea are very surprising.
Interesting.
But I can go in the north as well. I can go in places, I know a farmer in Ibaraki prefecture. They're making very beautiful and very aromatic black teas. So there is a shift. So the green tea that was industry standard by the country has been maybe not saturated, but let's say that there is so much green tea that now we start to see value in variety and more farmers started to develop this wakocha.
Right. So yeah, everything agricultural started to be more value added and also refined thanks to all those lab experiments safely. So I think I tried 4 different wagocha so far. And at the beginning, first time I heard, oh, this is a new branding name, Wakocha Japanese black tea. But it's not. It's very distinctively different. And I can try to another one. So yeah, listeners, if you haven't tried Wakocha, that's something it's worth trying. All right. So by the way, what is your favorite type of Japanese tea?
Oh, I get this question every day in our tea place, and you will get the same answer. It means I love all of them, but there is a moment for all of them. So you see, in Japan, we live by seasons. So right now, winter, we had 0 degree and snow this morning in Kyoto. So when it's very cold, you don't feel the same like when it's very hot. So when it's very hot, you tend to like more refreshing sencha, for example. And there is one thing that we can do also in Japan that works very well. We can make very beautiful cold brew teas. So cold brew works very well. In summer, we sell and we drink a lot of cold brew teas. But I don't have a favorite because I love all of them. But usually in this period, I like to drink, I like what we call the kabusecha, gyokuro, and tamaryokucha, which are all shaded version of tea because they are powerful. I like their umami. I like to have them usually in the morning. When comes the afternoon, I usually like to get a oolong or a wakocha.
Right. So yeah, you mentioned kabusecha, the shaded one, and you explained earlier, but by shading, I think it's more umami and also more sweetness, and which I love. So yeah, there's something it's really magical about just by covering the leaves for a couple weeks, it really dramatically changes the flavor. Just another.
Yes, it seems they found it by experiment or accident. We're not sure, but the tea leaves that are grown in the shades actually change the process, change the chemistry. So you see where my chemistry is useful because now I understand what's going on. During the photosynthesis process with a lot of light, the tea leaves produce a lot of catechin. Catechin is a family of polyphenol that is very good for health, but that's also very bitter. Caffeine also is bitter, by the way, and caffeine is also produced. We find caffeine in tea leaves. When we shade the tea plantations, then we stop the photosynthesis, but we cannot do that for too long because it's not good for the tea tree. So it's a short period of time, but that's enough to change the chemistry in the tea tree. And instead of producing the catechin, we will change the ratio and we will increase the amino acids that are more umami, that are described as being more sweet. It's not a sweetness like in being sugary. It's a sweetness like being soft, smooth, rich, gentle. And the kabusecha that I mentioned, sorry, I need to say, it's similar to this technique, but it's not shaded for as long as a gyokuro. And now these teas are very popular. Most of the time they are referred as a sencha, shaded for a certain number of days, but they are still green tea that are shaded usually for 1 week, 10 days. And it's a wonderful compromise because we still have the power of the sencha, but we start to have the softness of a gyokuro without being so refined as a gyokuro. So it's in between, and it's very good balance. So it has a lot of popularity.
Right. And you mentioned the bitterness, porphyro bitterness, and I said amami, like sweetness. I think the contrast that makes it really delicious because you sense both, and they contrast enhances each other's like bitterness and sweetness back and forth, and then umami through. It's really nice to entirely, the sense it, smell, taste, and back and forth. I think the whole experience of drinking tea is very delicate and you pay attention. I understand why people get into Zen mindset. So yeah, it's an
True.
amazing beverage.
Yes, it comes also with time because when we're patient and we develop our palate and we start to feel. It took me many years, but after 10 years, my taste is not the same like what it used to be 10 years ago. And now I'm able to perceive, like you mentioned, sometimes, it's dynamic. You can feel bitterness is not, it's something that is seen negative by many people, but actually you can have very good bitterness or balanced bitterness because it's a complex chemistry and it's a whole. You see, you have many tastes at the same time, and the bitterness is only one element of them. And it can be very pleasant. So we don't need to suppress it completely. It can be there. It depends the way it expresses itself.
はい。I think to
Yes.
me, the bitterness is really essential. And I think the charm of this natural plant, like you cannot eliminate one part of the taste. It's all the whole. And our body is also so natural. So I think kind of merging within the framework of nature, tea and our body gets together. That's how I feel when I drink tea. So anyway, so you mentioned you visit many different regions, tea regions of Japan. So tell us about Japanese tea regions. So I heard there are various main regions, and each one has different characteristics. So can you tell us some of those different regions, main regions, and also each characteristics of the region?
So, as a French, I wanted to see the region by applying the term of terroir, that is very applied for wine, for example. Because in France, depending on the region, we know the wine have a very specific characteristic. The same like you've got in California or Sonoma. The climate plays a big role. And we can say the same with tea, but it's not the same as with wine. So tea is more complex than wine because the climate, of course, affects the quality of the tea as much as the soil, rain, sun, humidity, fog, depth of the roots, type of cultivar. But what happened in Japan is some region develop their own way to make tea. So there is a historical and cultural background of some teas. So before I mentioned that black tea could be very good made even in the north of Japan or south of Japan, it doesn't disqualify the tea from being good. But there are some places where they've got more experience. So when we talk about the region of Japan, we've got a bit of history. So today, the biggest region of Japan by quantity, it became Kagoshima region. So it's in south of Japan. And most of the tea produced there is a green tea under the form of sencha, but also a lot of good gyokuro. And they produce more and more matcha as well. Shizuoka is the second region, so closer to Mount Fuji. There is a land of sencha. So sencha under many types of variations, beautiful, light steam sencha, mountain sencha, deep steam sencha. Then we've got other prefecture like Mie. Mie is the third region of Japan. It's not the most known, actually, because little marketing is done about the tea from Mie, but it's excellent. Mie is very good for kabusecha, and they're doing also some matcha that in the past used to be blended with the matcha from Kyoto. Miyazaki is excellent for the kamairicha, so the pan-fire green tea, and for the oolong tea. We've got Shikoku is the place of excellence for fermented teas, the ones that are sour. We call them Ishizuchi Kurocha, so the black tea from Ishizuchi. We've got the Goichi-cha from Kochi, that is cut like little stones, and the Awabancha from the east of Shikoku, that is still surviving today. That is a beautiful tea as well, but tastes differently. We've got another place where we've got a rare tea called Tamaryoku-cha. Tamaryoku-cha feels a bit like a kabusecha or like a gyokuro, but is very powerful, full body with umami, but stronger than the gyokuro. And we find it exclusively in the place called Ureshino in Saga Prefecture and in Nagasaki. We really love this type of tea. And of course, the matcha is very famous in the region of Kyoto, Uji and surrounding, and in the prefecture of Aichi. Traditionally, they produce it in a place called Nishio. So we've got a lot of long history, expertise that defines teas by region. Now there are some places that want to innovate with tea because they need to, either they're endangered or their tea production is reducing, so they're trying to develop something that is more characteristic of their terroir.
Wow. So I feel like I have to plan the tea tour trip throughout Japan.
Well, that's a good idea. And more tea tours are actually being organized. Originally, the industry was not geared up to receive visitors because, the industry was set up from farmers to wholesalers to make the shiage, so to refine the tea, and then to retailers. So we didn't have the culture or the habit of visiting tea farms, but now, especially in the region of Kyoto, it becomes more and more popular to visit tea farms. And for the people who visit the Shizuoka region, they have a beautiful tea museum as well.
Wow. Yeah, so seems like there's a lot going on in Japanese tea industry, but what are the current status and the trends in the Japanese tea industry overall? So are people drinking more tea or different types of tea or something else?
Good question. And this is also one of the reason, not the main reason, but one of the reason I have a tea house and I'm doing my job. It's because I was very surprised when I moved to Japan, even 20 years ago, to see that there are not so many tea houses remaining in Japan. Coffee took over. So we've got a lot of coffee places. Even the kisaten, called kisaten. Kisaten are the traditional small tea houses, where we call them cafe, where we drink tea. In the kisaten, we've got the sa is the tea character. We don't find tea anymore there. Or we will find a tea bag from an overseas tea, and coffee has been replacing. I think that the Japanese people, after many centuries of drinking tea, don't realize the treasure of what it is, and they have been bored with it. There are many reasons for that.
Well, when I grew up in Japan, I thought tea was boring. If something comes out free at home, and that to justify what happened, we didn't pay attention too much, and so my father had a weaker, sensitive stomach, so we had only hojicha, no variation. Every day, morning to night, hojicha. And I think I maximized my hojicha consumption even, but I started to find a more delicious one. So yeah, it was like a home, no special version. I think a lot of people get used to that kind of ordinary image of Japanese tea. And unless you are told, well, Japan is amazing, the tea is great, and everybody's drinking matcha abroad, then Japanese people realize, like, wow, we're doing something very special. And that's always the original pattern of Japanese culture. The foreigners say something is great, people pay attention, and the industry comes back. That kind of like a repeated.
It's funny. So I try my best to bring it back, but it's happening. We've got a lot of clients who want to visit because to attract people you need to have a nice place. If you have a nice place, people will want to come to spend a bit of time. So the first important matter is to create a good atmosphere. Then they come and they are curious because they don't come specially because they want to be surprised. They say the place is nice, we will spend a good time. And maybe they don't come for the tea, but maybe we'll talk about it later. They heard about a dessert, for example, or a sweet. And then they will tell you, wow, I didn't know that there was tea made in this region. I didn't know that tea could taste like this. You see, so... and that is also due to the fact that most of the tea that is consumed today is accelerated industrialization and commodity and convenience by tea that is found. Japanese people, don't get me wrong, they drink a lot of tea, but not from the teapot. They drink it from bottles. So
like convenience store
store bottles. Plastic bottles, there are 4 main brands. It's not a bad tea, but it's a tea beverage, and in no way it can compare with the tea that is brewed in the pot, and especially the high-grade teas that are coming from many regions that I mentioned before. So that is a big change in society. But I'm very confident that if people like me do some better work to add value to tea, come with new ideas, and innovation. And if, like you mentioned, people overseas are telling, actually, this is really great, it's a treasure, then the Japanese people will realize again, but, oh my God, actually, we add it all the time, but let's get back to it.
Mm. Well, I actually, throughout, even since we started talking in this episode, I feel like, wow, the way you capture the whole overview and history and the structure and global view of the difference between different countries, tea, and the very specifics. And I feel very, already very excited. I haven't been to your shop yet, but we're going to talk about your Mandaracha in a moment. But I found that interesting statistics. So tea farms can make money from premium tea mostly. So it is important that people appreciate quality leaf tea like you are promoting, and otherwise farmers cannot survive. And in fact, the tea farming areas have been rapidly declining, and according to the Japanese government, tea farming areas declined by 25% in 16 years between 2007 and 2023. So, but good news on the contrary is that Japanese tea export reached a record high in 2023 thanks to the popularity of matcha. So 74% of total export by value was from matcha, with the top importer being the US market. So matcha is value-added product and good for the farmers. So it's a good news and bad news at the same time. And I think you have the key role to promote the premium tea for Japanese farmers to survive, to stop declined farming areas. So go, Alex.
Yes, yes. Well, that's very. We live in very interesting times, so we should rejoice, of course, that matcha gains more popularity. Now, the key question is, you see, in Japan, we also always observe, long trends. Anything that is quick and short-lived is not good for the country because we always plan many generation. And it's good that there is an interest for tea and matcha, but is it something that is sustainable? Is it something that the people really appreciate at the value of what it is? My understanding is that many people drink matcha because they see it's a health ingredient, it's beautiful, it's considered as a beauty drink, and they drink it mostly in latte. The latte way to drink is not the way to drink in Japan. Actually, by putting latte in very good matcha, we will not taste the good matcha. The top quality matcha, they taste better without milk. Usually, we put milk in other product in order to get, let's say, a cocktail or get a good balance. So it's possible to make good latte. Is it going to be sustainable? Not for me to say. What I want, and that's what I'm doing, is you see the customer nowadays is not the same like the customer long time ago. Now we've got a lot of information. The customer want to know. They want to know the story. They want to know the product. They want to know how it is made. They want to know who are the people behind. The customer asks for more transparency. And at the same time, I was the same when I asked my question when I wanted to know more about Japanese tea. I was asking many questions because the more I know about it, the more I can like it, the more I can appreciate it, the more I can differentiate it, and the more I can make better choices. And we owe that to the consumer. We owe these stories, these explanations, and that's a big word of work of education. Because that changed totally the perspective of appreciating the tea and the way to drink it. So selling tea is good, but it needs to come together with appreciation of quality and with education. And I think this is our mission right now, not only mine, but the ones of the farmers, so that we can really choose and explain what is this suitable for, and work together, because the taste overseas are of course very different than it was in Japan, and it's difficult for Japanese farmer to imagine what can be the taste unless they go overseas and they try and they see the place themselves. In the same way, like I go to pick up the teas and to see the tea region, I need to understand the place. So there are two important places to understand: is where it begins and when it ends, where it's consumed. So you see, the value chain is extremely important. So the producer, the story, the quality, the specificity, the love they put in their product, their years, it's a very hard work. Many young people don't want to do that anymore. So we cannot go for a cheap tea because it's a lot of work. So we need to make people understand that this is very valuable and it's worth the price. At the same time, we need to understand the consumer, the way to drink, the beautiful place, the element of peace, the element of health, the element of taste. So it's giving value to the human body that is, drinking that cup of tea. It's
right.
bringing quality into life. Yeah.
And I think so the producers understand it, and you are the bridge between consumers and the producers. And like you said, the consumers' perceptions are changing very quickly. And to me, matcha, like you said, it's a kind of a trendy item, and you put it in milk, which Japanese people never ever thought of like 30 years ago. But it's happening, and it's the truth. It's like a Californian rolls that people are like, what are you thinking of? Like avocado? Or what are you insane? And now that became the entrance to real sushi. And in New York, people pay $500 per person easy for the authentic sushi. So I think matcha is a good entrance point for many people to discover, something, wow, tea is so profound. It's almost like fine wine or something people already became a big fan of in Japan and all over the world. And it's a different experience. And you said education, but I think education sounds like something more, very hard to approach. But I
That's
think,
right.
right.
Yes.
So you are kind of, I think, pipe or bridge or some kind of, you just have the space, community space, something very different. It's all communal, right? It's a social media. You need equal level access, and you share the information, and you can do it. You can actually teach in a school setup. Probably you may not want to do it, but probably you can do very well. But I think the way you let people know the value of tea, how fantastic it is, I think you're doing the right thing. So we'll take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll dive into Alex's fascinating tea house and tea shop, Mandaracha in Kyoto. So please stay with us.
Today's program is brought to you by Korin, a supplier of Japanese chef knives and restaurant supplies. Korin is proud of their Japanese culture and traditions, but they want you to know that their products are not just for Japanese restaurants. Their knives and tableware bring out the best qualities of food from every culture and fit into every restaurant from French to Pan-Asian to American. And that is why they're located in New York City, where people from every country in the world come to eat. Korin's Tribeca showroom is home to the most extensive collection of Japanese chef knives in the world, including Japan. Stop by to view their exquisitely designed tableware and the rarest natural sharpening stones. They have a whole range of knife services from repair and rust removal to reshaping and realigning. Korin is dedicated to this ideal, bringing the highest quality Japanese design to your table so you can experience the unparalleled quality of Japanese craftsmanship in your home or restaurant. For more information, visit Korin.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Japan Eats on HRN Heritage Radio Network. I'm your host, Katayama, and my guest today is Alexander Nicolau, who is the founder of the tea shop and tea house Mandaracha in Kyoto, which opened in 2019. So let's talk about the Mandaracha. So you have a beautiful tea shop and tea house in Gion district of Kyoto. So what is the concept of Mandaracha and what is your mission?
So when I created that space, I wanted to have, a typical Japanese house that is called a machiya. And it's not exactly a machiya, but we gave it the look of a machiya and a feeling of a machiya, which are all traditional Japanese houses that we find a lot in Kyoto. The shop, the place itself has three elements that for us are important. The first one is it's a place where you can find Japanese teas from all over Japan. So we've got a selection of about 30 different types of Japanese teas from different regions. Of course, in order to make a choice, it's very difficult to describe tea if you don't know what it is, if you don't taste, if you don't take the time. So people can sit and order from the menu. So in the menu, you will order the tea, then we will help and we will even show you how to brew it. And we want the people to brew it themselves. So when they brew it themselves, they will understand first that it's not so complicated. Second, that it's enjoyable to do it because you take the time, and usually they don't come alone. If they come along, they still speak with us because we like to know the story of everybody who is traveling, coming, visiting the tea place, and they want to communicate. You see, there is a lot of communication going on with tea. And they create a memory, not only a sensorial memory, but also a memory of visiting the place, having an exchange, talking, learning something new. It's a positive memory. And they feel good about it. And they say, wow, I created a good moment in my life that is peaceful, that is nice, that I enjoyed. I need more of this in my life. So they know more about the product, they know more about the place, and we hope that they will create more space like that in their life. So we've got the experience factor, we've got the communication factor, we've got of course, the choice factor of the product. We are doing also something else. We provide some pairings to go together with the tea. And in order to make it more accessible, because we want to make Japanese tea more accessible. You mentioned before education. Education is a hard term, I recognize. We cannot give all the tea in 10 minutes or 30 minutes. It takes a long time to learn. But we share information and we share experiences, we share moments. So we open the mind of the people so that they want to discover more. And then you can find or come back and deeper your understanding and your experience about tea. So when we developed our desserts, we have one thing that is very strict in our shop. I think you had a podcast not so long time ago about shojin yori, which is considered as a Buddhist type of food that is made only of plants and not using any animal product. In the Western world, now we call that vegan. So we don't use any milk or eggs, and all our desserts are vegan, like they used to be a long time ago in old Japan. And when Dogen and Esai brought the tea in Japan, they were also promoting a plant-based diet. So they are delicious, but they're surprising because you see the dessert that normally come together with Japanese tea and with matcha will be called wagashi. Wagashi are beautiful. They're in shape. They change by the season. They're made most of the time with ingredients like beans and rice. But we cannot find them overseas. So you see, the Japanese tea stays a bit enclosed in Japan because people will associate, yes, green tea, it was wagashi, and then it's I had a nice memory, but I cannot have it anymore. So we developed new type of dessert that goes well with green tea because most people drink black tea. And with black tea, it's easier to pair. You know, you've got chocolate, you get cream, you get dessert that are more rich. You want to treat yourself. But the green tea is more subtle, is more discreet. You cannot go with a strong taste because otherwise it will take over the taste of the green tea. So we need to go with subtle, not too sugary, so not too sweet, light flavors, maybe with some fruits. So what we developed is some new type of dessert. We have, for example, a yuzu cream cake. It's a raw cake. It's beautiful, it's fresh, and it goes very nice with green tea. And this is not a Japanese cake. We adapted it from a European patisserie pastry. We've got another one that I developed, being French. French is famous for a dessert called crème brûlée. So I adapted the crème brûlée to make it vegan, and we have it with matcha crème brûlée. It's a green crème brûlée. It's extremely popular, and people love it as well. We made also vegan ice cream made with Japanese tea or with Japanese fruits. So in Japanese fruit, I can use some citruses, I can use some kaki, I can use some, yuzu or kabosu, the famous citrus that are beautiful in Japan. But not only, we have also the pear sometime. We've got some mikan, so the mandarin. So we explore flavors and we match them with Japanese tea.
So this is a good example of how you bridge Japanese traditional
Yes, exactly.
aspects of tea and what's happening now is the global world. So yeah, you made me hungry by hearing all those sweets. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and we can say that you now an ambassador of Japanese tea. I endorse your title.
Thank you.
So how does your global career before opening Mandaracha help to manage your tea business?
The oil pollution and the expertise I was doing before doesn't help me a lot. It helped me to discover the tea, but the chemistry part helps me. The other part that helps me a lot is I had a second career before opening the tea house. I was managing open innovation in a Japanese beverage company that also is making tea, but not only, all kind of beverage, all kind of technology, health technologies. So I developed a lot of skills when it comes with working with startups, using new ideas, using some innovation in machines, innovation in agriculture. And that helped me a lot because it opened my mind. I give you an example, by working with many beverages, I was drinking, not anymore. I stopped many years ago. I became also vegan myself and I don't drink alcohol anymore, which greatly improved my life. But I was working with alcohol. For example, you can infuse drinks with gas. Most of the time you get carbonation, you get a sparkling drink, or you can get something that is more foamy when you infuse it with nitrogen. That will be the technique used for the Irish beer, for example, for the Guinness. And I was very fascinating. For many years, I wanted to carbonate the tea to make it sparkling, but it doesn't work. The tea, because of this tea taste profile, when you put carbonation, you bring acidity, it doesn't work. It's like if you try to carbonate coffee, you need to make it sugary to be good. So it never worked. But I was convinced that if we inject nitrogen and we work on good recipe, we will be able to provide a very nice way to drink. So during the renovation of the tea house, I made a lot of experiments. We adapted some fridges. I broke a few parts. We made a lot of tests because I love to experiment. There was a TV series that I remember when I was young and that is famous in the US called The A-Team. They always kind of broke something to readapt and to weld. And so we work a lot like in a garage. And I made many tests with green teas, with black teas, with oolong teas, and nitrogen-infused tea actually works very well. So I developed a tea tower that I built myself with a Japanese design, with a tower that looks made of a big bamboo, and we have tea on top. So it's no alcohol; it's pure tea. We have a way to infuse it. We have a way to inject the nitrogen, and it's lovely. And we can give a new life to teas that are not very famous. For example, the Kyobancha, the bancha from Kyoto, which is a bit smoky in big leaves that is very difficult to process. I don't see any people today, apart from grandmothers, the grandma and the grandpas, that still boil the tea leaves in winter in order to make the tea. It takes a lot of time. But we can do awacha, we called it. Awacha means foam tea, and I trademark it. That comes out on top, and we can give a new life to the Kyobancha. Like we can give a new life to the tea that is disappearing from the Hyogo prefecture called the Kancha. And it's lovely.
So is it something that you sell at the Mandaracha or it's something separate?
Yes, I sell it. And recently I start to develop it in other places. We collaborate with some hotels and restaurants because I want people to experience tea at a premium level. Maybe with fine dining, with different desserts. Alcohol consumption is decreasing. There are many, many people who, when they drink champagne, they drink wine, it's always very elegant. They've got these nice glasses. But you see, the people who don't drink alcohol don't benefit from the same kind of, they would like to have another drink as well. The only difference is when you drink tea like this, it's delicious. The aspect is beautiful. And on the top of that, it will increase you because tea wakes you up. Tea is very good for health, and it's very enjoyable.
Right. So it sounds like it's like the whole non-proof trend, and I hope like one day I get to taste it, and sometime near future. So,
Ne-
it seems that including what you're doing, like new things, you need development, invention. So the Japanese tea industry is following the path of probably some other industries like sake. It's been successful reviving itself by cultivating overseas market. Probably your sparkling tea could be one of the biggest products in the near future. But how do you envision the future of Japanese tea in Japan and abroad?
For Japan, I'm not too sure, because trends don't come so quickly in Japan, and Japan is usually long-term oriented. Um, like we mentioned before, if we manage to have an impact overseas, it could influence Japan consumption again. So it's difficult to pronounce myself in Japan. But we've got a lot of visitors coming to Japan, and they are very interesting because I communicate with people coming from all over the world, and I get a lot of their likings and what is attractive to them. So for me, it's like a lab. I can really experiment in my place and to see what might be the future. What I can say is now we experience a matcha boom, but I think there will be something else. Matcha is just the entry door to other product because it will come with, we will open the door and the understanding of the artisan words of what we call the monozukuri and shokunin-san, which means the people who are the specialists who are mastering their art and they continue to perfect it. So there will be an evolution because tea, as we talked before of the first period of tea, the second, the third. So matcha survived, but you see it disappeared in China. But the tea evolved. So there will be an evolution in tea. What will it be exactly? We're not sure. But I know that some of the teas that we have now that are maybe not yet known have a lot of potential if we come with way to drink, to put at the right place, or to put the right value on them, like the awacha system, for example, with when it's foamy. But I also think that the elements that are coming from the tea ceremony itself, that are now very locked, it's very ancient. Many people, they want to discover the moment of, meditative, something that is respectful, something that is calm and tranquil. You see, there is an increasing number of people who are going into yoga, into retreat, into spiritual activities. So I think there is a big chance and a big connection. A part of the world will be very sensitive to that. And I think there is another step of evolution for tea. So what we need is to continue to share the information, share the experience, continue to develop, to try new things. I'm not
Right.
going too crazy because I still respect the tea. The original spirit of the tea needs to be respected, but it will continue to evolve, and it's normal it will evolve because life is in motion. It's nothing is frozen in time.
Right. Well, unless traditions evolve, it gets stale and rotten. And that's
Yeah.
one chef I respect say. So I think what you're doing is that you have the bigger global view and also you're dealing with various customers. And I think, for example, the tea ceremony, which is beautiful, but it's pretty not approachable because you need a certain setup and also you have to sit there. And I really think it's amazing, but we need to get to know the real tea, matcha, not in milk, and with spiritual aspects as well. And also, I think beyond drinking from pet bottle, um, you know, convenient packages, it's really important to have natural plant flavor, which is called steeped tea that you
Mm.
serve. So I think you're really bridging the world in response to what's being demanded by everybody. And people realize, oh, wow, I wish I knew this Japanese tea yesterday and I could keep drinking it. That kind of like feeling good, very spiritually cleansing. That aspect tea shouldn't be so difficult to get to know. So you are really playing an important role to connect the division of perception and of the actual delicious, just that casual, beautiful, natural beverage called Japanese tea. So yeah, so what are your plans and dreams?
Well, my dreams. So you see, now I reached 50 years already. I say that I really started to live from about 40. So for what is ahead of me, I'm extremely satisfied to do the current job, to share my passion, to meet people, to cross activities. So I'm working more and more with artists. So not later than yesterday and last week, we were collaborating with some artists. So Shamisen player, Shamisen is a 3-string instrument that is also needs to evolve. And we have a new way to play shamisen and to gather people. And other Japanese art like kyogen. So kyogen, that is also a performance coming from a no theater that is fascinating. So we are combining, tea with art. Because tea is the door to many, many activities. We have tea with Rakugo, tea with show, tea with music. So we are trying to penetrate all the elements of beautiful society. So, because, everything is connected. So my dream is to create more collaboration. I would like to also work more in develop my B2B, working with more hotels and nice establishments. Maybe one day when this place is running well, if time allows, to create another, maybe not a chain, but I would like to create some spots that are similar, like little branches in other countries. We will see if it's possible and if I can find the right partners for that. I go with the flow because I'm already very busy and I meet incredible people. We inspire each other. I'm very glad that if there are other young Japanese, other people that are developing the culture of tea and sharing it, I'm very happy to collaborate, contribute, inspire. I can continue like that, If I continue like that, I'll be very happy. If I can do more, I'll be also very happy. And if one day, if I still have the strength, and if I live long, I would like also to have my little farm to create my own tea because I've got many ideas as well.
Right. Well, I think your focus and drinking tea every day keeps you living healthy forever. This is amazing. So, where can we find your updates online and on social media?
So if you want to know what we're up to, so the best way is, one is the website, which is mandaracha.com. And the other one is the Instagram account where we upload our activities and what's new. And the account is Kyoto_Mandaracha.
Right. And on the
Yes.
website right now, there are events coming up, and it is a really interesting art events and shamisen and
Oh, they're great people. They are really great people. I'm glad that I met them. We met them through the tea house, and they're doing a fantastic work. And I'm sure they will be also successful. And I thank them, by the way, for giving us the opportunity to serve tea to their public during their show.
Right. All right. So, great job, and wish you luck. Please keep me posted. I'm very excited about what you're doing, and I think Japanese tea industry is hopeful to have someone like you. He's a great ambassador. So,
Thank
thank
you
you so
very
much.
much. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for the interview, and I hope I have the pleasure to welcome you in person one day in Kyoto.
I look forward to it.
Okay.
Right. So, listeners, if you have any questions or comments about the show or suggestions for show topics or guests, please contact us at japaneats@heritageradionetwork.org or at kikoteyama.com. Japan Eats is a weekly program and is always available at heritageradionetwork.org as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify as a podcast. I engineered Gabriel Jin. Thanks for listening. I will see you next week.